friends. Welcome to My Story, where we showcase the remarkable work and contribution of individuals who have made a difference in their respective fields. I am Glory Shine, your host. Our show is all about sharing inspiring stories, discussing important issues, and celebrating the accomplishments of extraordinary people. Today, it is our joy to have Chitra Thadathil with us. Chitra Thadathil hails from Madurai, Tamil Nadu. Chitra is a speech-language pathologist and the founder and director of Dimensions Center for Child Development. Dimensions is a center that provides evidence-based practices for pediatric intervention. Since 2003, after completing her master's degree, she has extensively worked among children with autism and other developmental delays. She is the only speech-language pathologist in India with certification in the SOS Approach to feeding and is currently pursuing her master's degree in sensory integration from Sheffield University, UK. Families from around the country and the world travel to DCCD to participate in her intensive and specialized therapy programs. Chitra has various academic achievements and international certificates. Chitra is married to Rajoy Thadathil and they have a son named Ashish. Hi Chitra, welcome to this talk show.
Hello, Pastor Glory. Thank you for having me here.
You, being the founder of Dimensions, providing evidence-based practices for pediatric intervention, one of the challenges faced by parents are speech difficulties in their children. What is speech therapy?
As the name suggests, speech therapy is a therapeutic intervention that is non-invasive without the use of medications as well. And we provide interventions that are evidence-based, which means there is a hierarchy in which children learn and acquire language and speech, and we use that hierarchy to provide interventions for young children. This is not only relevant to children, we also provide not dimensions, but by and large in speech therapy is provided for even older adults who've lost their speech due to a brain injury, due to a stroke or an accident. Also, individuals with stammering, they do benefit from speech therapy. The ideology behind this is that the brain is neuroplastic and an environmental stimulation such as what we do in speech therapy can build brain connections and improve a child's language and speech.
What are the typical speech and language milestones?
So by 1 year of age, children acquire their first word. By 2 years, they have 50 to 200 words in their vocabulary and they are learning to make short sentences. By 3 years, they are able to have two-way conversations. They are able to use 3 to 4 sentences back and forth. And by 5 years, a child acquires almost adult-like language. When this does not happen, and if there is a delay or a difference in this pattern, then the child has missed the milestone and they need speech therapy.
Okay, so when does a child need speech therapy and what are the signs to look out for?
If the child misses these milestones, and if a child is unable to maintain eye contact during a conversation or an interaction, the child is unable to make their requests known, the child has difficulty in following an instruction or imitate gestures and movements, then these are some of the common indicators to watch out for, and therapy can be started as early as just a few months after their birth. If the child doesn't have that back and forth, that beam in their eyes, they're not able to reciprocate, babbling, cooing, all these are indicators in early years.
What are the various childhood speech and language disabilities?
Children do come to us with language delay. That is, they don't understand what is spoken to them by their parents or their caregivers. We have children who are not able to express back what they have understood. Children who have stammering, they are not able to talk fluently and they stammer during a conversation or when they're trying to express something. We do work with children who are dyslexic, who have difficulty in reading. Now, these are common conditions that we see also in children with a diagnosis of autism, diagnosis of Down syndrome, cleft lip and palate, and other conditions, syndromic conditions. they do have speech and language developmental differences and delays. So these are the kind of kids that come to us for speech intervention.
So, do speech pathologists treat feeding difficulties as well? Are there any age-related milestones to look out for, and when must a parent seek help with regard to this?
Feeding is also an area that the speech pathologists work towards in terms of helping the child to eat adequate quantities. The goal is to give them adequate nutrition and hydration. And the reason that speech pathologists work very closely to this is because they work on the oral motor structures. The anatomy and physiology is learnt in depth during their years of graduation and studies, and we implement that in practice. If a child is not able to eat adequate quantities, they're having coughing, gagging during meal times, they're having repetitive vomiting or throwing up during meal times. These are some of the common indicators that we see. If these conditions are present during a mealtime, you may have to meet a speech pathologist for intervention. And other conditions, like if they're having difficulty in breathing during eating, or they turn purple while they're eating, discoloration of the face, all these are indicators that there's something serious happening inside, and parents need to be alert and look out for meeting with a speech pathologist who's one of the team members of a multidisciplinary team approach where we provide interventions for feeding therapy.
What is the role of a speech language pathologist in autism intervention?
Autism is characterized by differences in language, social, and deep interest or specific interest in certain aspects. These differences prevent them from being able to fully participate in the society around them or fully participate in the environment around them. And since speech and language is also an important aspect that is difficult for these children, they come to us for intervention. And that's how a speech pathologist has a serious role in treating autism, because it's not just the speech that is affected, it's the speech, the language, the overall communication, the gestural communication, feeding. These are some of the areas that we work with autistic individuals.
Who qualifies to provide speech therapy?
There are a lot of people coming up with new terminologies, new roles, and they call themselves as speech therapists. But then a person who is a qualified speech pathologist, someone who's completed their bachelor's or their master's degree in the relevant field in speech and hearing and communication sciences, they are qualified because they learn the brain pathways, they learn the muscles involved in speech. So it's not just the oral motor structures for speech, it's your lungs, it's how your abdominal grading is, your posture, all of these have to be considered for speech intervention, which needs to be definitely given by a qualified professional as a speech pathologist.
How has being a speech language pathologist helped you to reach out to families?
So when a child comes to us with a speech and language delay and we identify that this child also has an autism for a diagnosis, it becomes hard for parents to accept it and come to terms with it, because they are afraid that the society will look down upon their child, or they won't have equal opportunities, or they will have more difficulties in terms of getting the right school for their kids, etc. And when parents come to know about this, it's hard for them to cope, and that is where we come in. And during the time of diagnosis, or during the time of helping them to understand how to cope with this, we let the parents first know what the diagnosis is. We let them know what are the interventions available. We give them a roadmap that, this is the first stage, and then next level we achieve this. What are the different therapies that are required? What are the different interventions that are available? So we give them a clear idea of what it is like. And we also see parents who have difficulties in terms of, expressing this to the people around them. They're afraid that there are environmental barriers. They're afraid that the society is, keeping them away, or, keeping the child away from mingling with the other kids, etc. And we help the parents understand how their child is unique, and being different is the beauty of this child. We let the parent know that there is hope and the child is eventually going to make progress. We don't promise anything that is not real. We give them a clear understanding, and we are very honest in, expressing what the need of the child is, what the diagnosis is. We don't hesitate twice. We don't think, if I tell this parent might not come back to me. No, it's outright. We tell them what it is, not in a way to be too harsh or like too raw that they can't take it, but we definitely break it down and we walk them through, and we are there to empathize with them. We are there with them during this process of coping, and we're always available. The entire team is available. And the clinicians are also very sensitive in meeting the needs because they are sensitized towards it. So in this way, we are able to help families that come to us for therapy, not just to give them a diagnosis and a treatment approach, but beyond that, to walk them through the entire process, give them the correct roadmap so they don't have to go here, there, everywhere and worry which is the right intervention to take, which we should not take. So it's not just about speech therapy and occupational therapy and special education that we do in Dimensions, but we also let them know what are the other options available for them. What are the other treatment methods that are really helping the child? And that clear picture helps parents.
Clear picture and walking the families through the entire process, giving them the guidelines and the options available, helps them to come to terms and take the treatment forward. That's what we understand. Okay. Is there a rising concern in speech and language delays post the pandemic, and why is it so?
There is definitely an increase in the number of children coming to us with a diagnosis of speech and language delay or autism for that matter. Especially after the pandemic, we are seeing an increase because it appears that children did not have adequate opportunities to go outside, meet people around, have an exposure to a park, a play area, play with the sand, the mud, be around with other children, go on different equipments in the park. And when children don't have adequate exposure to these activities, which is typical of children, they do not have enough of sensory experiences. And many children during this time have resorted to excessive gadget use. So when a child is excessively using gadgets, it's only their visual processing skills and their auditory processing skills that is put into use. The other senses like the balance system, the touch response, the tactile, the proprioception, that is the deep pressure we feel in our muscles and joints that helps us to know where our hand, for example, is moving in space. Now these senses are not put to use adequately when the child is excessively using screens. And that leads to other challenges, including a delay in speech and language, because it's not a two-way interaction. The child is just having one way, it's just input. And many times children don't even understand what they're watching. And most of these programs also, although they claim that it is made for kids, the speed at which the screens move, the auditory input, the sound effects that it has, the lighting effects, these are not for a child's developing brain. It causes a lot of damage to how their hormonal response is with regard to their environment and space, which can be very stressful for kids, but they don't realize it. So these I see has also been one of the reasons. There's a lot of research to it as well, why these challenges, lack of environmental exposure and excessive screen use could lead to speech and language delays in children.
Excessive screen use leads to speech and language delays because of the limitations and one-way speech. That's what it is. Yes. Okay. So when was Dimensions founded?
Dimensions was founded in 2012 as a private practice in one of the bedrooms of our 2 BHK in Banaswadi, and it evolved now to be a team of 15 professionals working together, professionals as in both clinicians and other staff working together. And currently we are able to meet the needs of 120 plus children with speech and language delays, autism, dyslexia, etc.
Okay. So what is the vision of Dimensions Center for Child Development?
Dimensions was founded with a vision to provide evidence-based practices in the field where every child has an opportunity to take their space and their position in the society. We want to train children to become independent, be able to advocate for themselves. So that is the vision of the center. The the reason that we wanted to have this as a vision is because we want to change the way therapies are provided for children in our country. We wanted to be more child-centric. We wanted to be more child-led, where the child is happy to be a part of a therapy room and where they are learning things and they will retain it for longer. These are some of the areas that are yet to develop in our country, and that's exactly what we want to do in Dimensions.
Wonderful. So, how can the church as a community help children with speech and language difficulties and delays?
I think our church is doing a fantastic job in that already. We have a special Sunday school where there is one-on-one interventions for children, and we can also have small group interventions where there are just 2 or 3 kids, gradually progressing in the communication differences that they're having. That's something that we can look forward to, which I think we are already doing, right? We also can consider their differences, especially autistic kids. Some of them have difficulty in tolerating the noise. And we can encourage the parents to have noise cancellation devices when they're coming into the church. So when there is music, I mean, most of us won't have a difficulty in tolerating the music levels, but for kids with a diagnosis of autism who have hypersensitivity to hear and listen, they may have difficulty. So we can encourage them to use noise cancellation devices. We can encourage them to have earplugs where the noise is dampened. And these kind of accommodations is great. We also can educate our people in the church to be accommodative, not to stare at them, not to ask inappropriate questions to parents like, oh, what do you do, or how do you do, etc. But be open to help wherever help is required for our kids. And they may also have, some of them that I have seen is they do have this monotropism. They talk about the same thing for a long period of time. That's a part of being autistic, and we can facilitate in that, listen to them, be there for them. And when we have to help them with a dialogue, we can do it in a subtle manner where they enjoy that conversation. So these are some things that we can definitely do. We can educate the church members how to be more accommodative and how to give them support, not just the child or the individual, but also the family by and large. And I personally would like to appreciate what the church is doing in this aspect. We have special Sunday school, we have programs for them. And I think that in itself is a lot of accommodation and awareness and acceptance to definitely the church community.
What is the success rate of working with children with speech and language difficulties?
This is one of the most easiest question to ask, and our parents often ask this question, but the most difficult to answer because each child is different. Their potentials, their condition, the severity, all of this is different. So when it comes to answering this question, I often tell parents that, it's like this. Some children progress within 2-3 months and they get discharged from therapy and they leave. We also have kids who are with us for more than 5-6 years now and who are still learning to talk and communicate. There are various factors that contribute to it. One is there is a clear difference versus there's a subtle difference in the way they are wired, or there is a diagnosis or a condition. The severity of it also matters. The medical conditions also matters. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is how do we plan goals? How do we plan an individual educational plan for this child? That is important. It is also essential that the environmental barriers are removed. For example, if the school is not accommodating the child in the classroom and the child is made to sit alone, this is something that parents need to immediately work upon with the school. Definitely we are there to support them in this, to create awareness for the school as well. It's not that they deliberately do it, but there is lack of awareness in our country. So these kind of barriers should be removed. The child should be included. If the child is not ready for inclusion, maybe a support person is with the child to help the child participate in the classroom. These also matter to a speech and language progression, because when the child is not happy, when the child does not have enough of opportunities, if he's going to be isolated, he will not be able to learn how to talk and communicate, right? So these are some of the barriers that parents need to watch out for. And definitely a lot of input from the family is essential. parents must be equally involved. They should carry forward what is being taught in therapy. It's like doing math. If we do math 3 days a week, only in school, and don't practice at home, how will our kids score? Versus our kids do math at school, they come back home and they practice every day. Definitely 100 on 100 is guaranteed, right? So this also is equally important. So if all these parameters are considered and everything is given at a good proportion and a balance, progress is much faster.
Each child is unique and each child takes their own time to progress based upon their severity. And then progress is also based on how parents follow up at home and practice with the kid what is being taught in the class so that they can continue in helping the child progress. That's what it means,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
So it's like there's no input versus an output.
Yes.
We can't measure it in that manner.
So tell me about your journey, how you got a passion to provide practices for pediatric intervention.
So my interest started when I was in my first year bachelor's degree. In those days, a diagnosis of autism was rare, not like how we see it now. Now it's 1 in 89 children are being diagnosed with autism. In those days, it was very rare. And then when I went to my master's degree, I had an opportunity to work in the department where autistic children had a special program in our college. I was involved in that. That made me more keen in working with autistic individuals. And once I finished my master's degree, I right away worked with an organization that specializes working with autistic individuals. So that's how it all started. And after my son was born, I became more sensitive to the needs of the children, became more engaging. I knew how to connect, because many times we work from the outside, but we don't really get that connection. And that connection is something that I learned after I had my son in 2009. So it's a journey and I'm still learning. I wouldn't say that I've learned everything. It's a process. And yeah, I enjoy working with kids.
So Chitra, if there's one thing that you want families to know, what would that be?
Many children are brought to us at the age of 4 or 5 when the child have already reached the critical period for language development. What I mean by critical period is by 5 years of age, the brain acquires neural wiring almost like an adult. And the child's speech and language skills, if they're typically developing, are also almost like an adult. And when a child is brought to us for interventions at that age, it becomes very hard for the child to make adequate progress. It's when the children are younger that the brain connections are rapidly developing in a child. And whatever we input, there is enough of progress or there is adequate progress. But as they get older, this speed at which children learn and acquire language becomes slightly slower. I wouldn't say that they won't make improvements, but the progress rate reduces by 4 or 5 years of age. We see the maximum gains children get from speech therapy is less than 2 years of age. If it's 1.5, they make a lot of progress, rapid progress, I would say. And parents come to us so late because they are told by their relatives, their neighbors, or their pediatrician that, child will develop language on their own by 4 or 5 years of age. And oftentimes the grandparents in the home tell your uncle spoke at 4 years or your grandfather spoke at 5 years. Just let them be. He's a boy child. He will talk late. He will catch up. Now, these are some of the myths that are still prevalent. And when parents follow these and they don't come for interventions on time, then the progress is going to take much longer than what it could have been if they've started earlier. So if there's one thing that I want to communicate to the audience, it would be to not delay in approaching a speech pathologist. Don't be overcome by biases. Don't be overcome by stigma. What will people think if I take child for therapy? There is help available. And if you can take it earlier, your child will make adequate progress. If you take therapy sessions earlier, your child will make adequate progress instead of waiting and watching, assuming that they will talk on their own. Waiting and watching will lead to delay in progress. This is one thing that I wanted to let the audience know.
Thank you, Chitra, for your time and all the best for your masters that you're in progress with. We pray that God will use you to be His mighty influence in the field that you are serving in, and many people and families will be impacted by your services. God bless you.
Thank you so much for having me. It is a joy and a privilege to be in this interview with the church. Thank you so much.
So, dear friends, if you want to avail services of Dimensions, or if you have a child or an acquaintance who needs help with speech and learning difficulties, you can always connect with Dimensions. They are available. The link will be in the description, so you can go ahead and find if there's anyone that is in need to help and guide them through this process.